Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. I am your host tonight, Michael Roser, and we are ridden with lag, it seems. And I apologize in advance because I know this will affect a few things tonight. But that being said, we're going to get this going and we're going to have a great time. Sorry about the intro. I didn't want to keep it going there because it obviously wasn't working smoothly and it's not a good look. So with that being said, I would like to tell you, folks, I have a fantastic show here for you this evening. Returning to Dark Hour Paranormal is Michelle Gray. We had a fantastic show with her, Elisa Medhus and Eric Medhus, along with channeling Nikola Tesla and the three key players in the Montauk Project. I do highly encourage you folks to go and check out that show. She channeled all of this for us, and it was a fantastic time. I'll be quite honest with you. It's something that affected me. It's still today, and I'm still learning from that broadcast and some of the messages that were put forth for me personally. Man, I am so excited. Sorry about the last couple weeks. Schedules just didn't seem to work out for certain things. I was actually myself a little busy. So we're back on track now, and happy to have Michelle Gray with us this I'm going to share with you her bio, which is a little bit long, but I think you're going to understand why I want to start it. Okay. So this can be found on her website, thehealing-art.com. Please go and check out her work and what she does. She's a fantastic woman, an incredibly talented medium as well. Michelle is a spiritual practitioner, psychic medium, magic mama, blogger, and public speaker. Michelle is very empathic and was a target for bullies as a child and young adult. Man, I can relate to that. Her connection to the spirit world was something she knew existed, but she kept much of it within her family and close friends. In 2004, after the birth of one of her children, she was diagnosed with a hereditary disease called SpinoCerebellar Ataxia type 6. I did practice this 2 weeks ago. Sorry. She was told that her health would continue to fail and that she would progress over her adult life and eventually be unable to walk or talk as a result. By 2011, Michelle had been hospitalized several times with pain and illness and was highly addicted to opiates as a result of being prescribed a deadly dosage for a lengthy time. Michelle started a road to recovery, trying to rebuild and focus on better days ahead. At fourth child and faced a difficult pregnancy with complication and hospitalization. August 19th, 2012, a very special baby boy was born, and after a short stay in the NICU, it finally looked like life for Michelle and her family was starting to get back to a new normal. On May 15th, 2014, this was the day that changed everything. Michelle was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer with a 7x7 tumor in her left breast already spread to her lymph nodes. For a lifetime, the one thing that always held Michelle back from exploring her ability and not accepting herself was fear of death, and now she stood facing her own mortality without knowing if she would survive this or not. Michelle described this time as surreal. She also knew there was one thing she had to believe in: herself and her connection to spirit. She made a promise that she would not allow anyone else to tell her if she was going to live or not. This was the time to flip the switch and start living life now, with positive energy leading the way. After 6 months of chemo and a bilateral left mastectomy and diep flap reconstruction, I'm clearly not in the medical field. I'm sorry that I'm butchering some of these words here, Michelle specifically. Michelle was cleared and cancer-free. Okay, so essentially, she went through 28 rounds of radiation and monthly hormonal treatment on top of the other things she had going on, and she was cleared and cancer-free. Making that intention, opening the door, and claiming her place in the universe began to manifest her truth. The darkest times in her life brought her to remembering her true self and back in the light. Today, Michelle works closely with the spirit world and her guardian angel, Bronwyn, and her spirit guide, Eric. She is able to use many avenues to heal and transform her own life, as well as assisting others on their journey. Michelle brings forth messages, hope, and guidance through interdimensional channeling, spirit portraits, and healing energy. Michelle also speaks, teaches, and writes transparently about her life and the experiences she has had along her path and what she's experiencing every day as her entire family has made a paramount transformation. Michelle often likes to talk about the interesting experiences her children bring forward from spirit. She feels that she is just as much a student as she is a teacher, and she loves to see others become empowered to be who they truly are. Michelle describes the way she works with spirit as unique. She respects her relationship to the spirit world and only connects with the light and for the best of everyone involved. All right. Got one more here. Follow along. For posts on inspiration and personal stories and channeled messages, Michelle uses social media to also share her spirit art and her metaphysical mama stories, along with her passion for helping others who are raising open and empathetic children during these times of ascension. Without further ado, and I'm sure you're all tired of listening to me, let's talk to Michelle Gray and give her a great warm welcome. Good evening, Michelle. Thank you for coming back on Dark Hour Paranormal. It's fantastic to see you tonight.
That's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me. You did a really good job. That was a long that was so long. Sorry.
But relevant. It's relevant. Honestly, it's so important for people to understand where we come from and why your story is so unique. A lot of people do have different experiences which lead a path of self-discovery, to say the least. And I really felt that it was important to read that for everyone tonight. Sorry that it wasn't a little bit clearer, but we got through it, and I think we're good. So, all right. So let's start from the beginning with you, Michelle, seeing as you are no stranger to doing these sort of interviews. How did you struggle and how did the struggle and turmoil you experienced in life propel you to become a channel for the spirit realm? And now this is a very general question, some of which is sort of enlightened in the last bit that we just read. But if you could elaborate a little bit on how this actually put you into a better state where other people might have allowed the sickness to sink them, and perhaps maybe your mentality during that entire transition.
Well, like the biggest part, I could go back into all kinds of experiences throughout my life, but of course the pinnacle was cancer. It was the addiction, and then my son, when he was born, my son has autism, and he was sick. And then having the cancer, I was at this place of complete and utter despair. When I was diagnosed, I felt like I had already been through so much, and that I was like, yeah, I'm fairly positive. And you have that feeling like, why does all these things always happen for everybody else? And I feel like I'm a good person. And I just don't understand why it's not connecting for me. I didn't really understand what being positive was, because I thought I was being that way. But in the back of my mind, it was that self-defeating talk that I had. It was people pleasing. It was trying to control everything around me, everybody around me, to make myself feel better. And when I got hit with cancer, it was like, you can't look anywhere else but yourself. And that cancer stripped me right down, literally stripped me right down from head to toe. And I had to go inside. I had to look at myself. And it was that journey. And, when you read that specific part that said, what part was it? Now I'm drawing a blank. But that specific part, the specific part that just with, that I got it. Thank you, Eric. Eric just gave that back to me. The part where I wasn't going to let anybody else tell me whether I was going to die. And the reason why that's so important is I was the person that was a hypochondriac. Do I have this? And looking it up on the internet. And do I have this disease, right? That this is the way I was. And it was a joke. People kind of laugh. Oh God, the last person that should have anything is Michelle. She'd drive everybody crazy. I drove myself crazy. I drove my family crazy, my friends crazy. So when this happened to me, I knew something had to change. And at first it wasn't for me, it was for my kids. It was for my family, because I didn't want to watch my kids either lose me If they were going to lose me, they were going to watch me go out the very best way possible. And I was going to
Hmm.
show them how strong I was. Or I was going to show them that we're going to make this, we're going to make this a lesson. We're going to show what positivity can do. So it was a lot of talk and inspiration I was giving myself. And suddenly that started to change things.
Hmm.
It was like my thoughts started to change. And then that started to lead to me feeling different and feeling better. And I was already having the psychic stuff, the mediumistic stuff has always been in my life. It's just I wasn't confident enough to bring it outside of myself. I didn't believe in myself enough to feel that I could do anything with it with anybody else. So I just kind of pretended like I would give people psychic readings, and they'd be like, "How'd you know that?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I play around and I joke around, but I was never really serious about it." So it was like everything was coming together over this time of my cancer journey. And when I came out of surgery, I had a 12-hour surgery. I remember going into surgery, and I came out of that surgery, and I kid you not, it was like somebody that had flipped a switch in me. I felt so different and just so ready to be who I'm meant to be. And that was really the big change right there. That's where everything really started to change.
That's really amazing because you basically looked over the edge into the abyss, realized that this was the time to either jump or stay in a sense. You know, beast in going forward with this. But this also comes back to the whole idea that thoughts manifest, which I know is still something new for some people out there. And this is why we still talk about it to this degree, because, there are a few people who know what they're doing, but most of us haven't mastered it. But if you're able to do something like that, and you're reinforcing the ideas and the mentality and the positivity behind it, I think you're right. Even through that sort of strong arming in the sense of, reprogramming yourself, eventually you will shift over as long as you stick with it. Most people don't. And that's why things like The Secret have come under certain fire, because people will work with it for a little while and then say, oh, well, guess what? This doesn't work. But they might have only needed one more day. They don't know. But
Well,
yep, go ahead.
yes. So I was just going to say, well, the key is, and it's interesting that you'd say that, because what I've learned so much is, as I've gone along in my journey, my guides, particularly Eric, has shared so much with me about why these steps were so important to me. And it was to teach me that I was able to create my own reality, and that truly did come from within myself. And thoughts were merely just one part of it, because what I had to do was go into my emotions. And as a healer, I had to go into the wounds that I had inside and reprogram those emotions, get to the root of those, change the story in them, reprogram not only the way I was thinking, but how I was feeling, how I was operating, what I was believing, because it's that whole combination. Because, we can have the thoughts, that's just one part of it, but it's changing how you truly behave, how you act, how you feel, and what you believe. And that's not an overnight process. That's
No.
something you have to dedicate yourself to, but you will create the reality that is meant for you by dedicating yourself to that. And I am proof that that works.
I would say so. And again, this is just another leg in such a fantastic story that we're going to continue on. So let's talk a little bit about your channeling. Okay. How do you how do your channelings usually appear to you? Are they visual images? Are they auditory? Do you see words associated and with certain feelings? How does this work for you? Because I know that it's a little bit different for everybody, but there are some consistencies.
Hmm. Well, for the most part, we'll say when I'm connecting with somebody, how spirit works with me is I tend to feel them first.
Hmm.
So I'll start to feel them come into my body, and I'll either feel them, like it's like my body's like a map. So I'll feel them come in the left side, the right side, and I know whether it's a male or female. I can tell whether it's like an interdimensional being, or where that being, because it feels different in my body. And that was just over doing it over and over again. You begin to feel these patterns. Once that starts to come in, say I have somebody that's sitting across and doing a session with me, I would start to ask them the questions based on what it was that I was feeling. And once that person locked in the information, the spirit would say, "This is how I passed," and that's when the telepathic stuff would start to come out. So often they speak in my own voice, and so I hear them telepathically. I will hear the words, but it sounds
Hmm.
like my voice. Occasionally, I will hear a tone, like I'll hear like an accent, or sometimes I will hear them outside of me, which is really in the back meridians back here. So
Hmm.
the other day I had a session where I heard two brothers that came in together and they were talking over top of each other. And I was telling the client, I said, I've got two guys, and I was describing, she goes, "Well, that's my father and my uncle." And I said, "Well, they won't be quiet. Like, I can't understand what they're saying because they're like kind of talking over top of each other and they're murmuring." And she laughed because she said, she goes, "That's exactly the way they were. They would not shut up to let each other get a word in edgewise. They argued all the time." So they were doing that purposely so that she would recognize that that's who they were. So it depends on the spirit as well. It depends on what, because not all spirits communicate the same. So they will use different things with me. Now, I also see clairvoyantly. I do see outside of, like I see in my inner eye and my third eye, and I'll see visuals. It looks like a daydream
Hmm.
is how it is for me. So, when spirit's giving me information, they will give me like sometimes little movies will play. There'll be like little clips of movies, or I'll see body parts. I might see a hand, a ring. Sometimes I'll see symbols. Sometimes I'll see words that light
Mm.
up. And on the outside of me, I will see spirit like movement in the air, like molecules or orbs. And the way I see orbs is they look very clear to me, like they just movement in the air.
Huh. I've
Mhm.
never heard of a medium having a visual experience along with, the channeling in that way where you're actually physically seeing orbs. That's really interesting. And to me, means the energy is very strong,
Mhm.
whatever you're working with or what's around you.
Mhm.
What is there significance to hearing spirit on the right side or the left side in respect to channeling, and also in perhaps walking around daily life? Is there a difference? And the reason I'm asking this is because I have heard that if you hear a spirit on your right side, that's one you don't answer. If it's on your left side, it's a higher power and you can answer that. Is that number one true in your experience, or is there any reflection of that in channeling as well?
Not in my experience. Like see, my main teacher and who's taught me how to channel is Eric. That's who I've worked with predominantly. And I have had mentors that have worked with me as well and just helped me understand things. But what Eric has taught me is that your belief system is what rails. That's what it is. So if you believe that to be true, if you just like a superstition, if you believe that to be true, well, then that's going to be what your reality is. So that's true for you.
Mm.
Myself, I've not experienced that. To me, my right and left indicates whether they're male or female.
Hmm.
When they come up behind me, it's an angelic presence. When they come down this way, it's the higher self or source. So that's how it works for me. But the biggest thing is it really does work differently for everybody. So there really is no right or wrong way for it to be done. So
Hmm.
it's the whole process is to play with it yourself and ask the questions and trust what you're receiving so that you can start to build those patterns and understand how you operate with spirit.
Hmm. Absolutely. That makes sense. I mean, people talk, and, obviously there are some who have certain experiences, and without real explanation, sometimes those experiences become law somehow in our community. And I'm not sure how that happens, but it does.
Mhm.
In respect to your channeling, still, have you ever come into contact with a negative entity while channeling? And has anyone ever tried to hijack a channeling in a sense?
I gotta say, I've not. I've not. And I will tell you the one experience that I have had that felt negative, and I'll say it wasn't really during a channeling. It was my daughter, who at the time she was 15, 16. she had come to me and she said, "Mom, I'm having these really weird dreams." And she was telling me about seeing this clown looking thing. It was really creepy what she was describing, and it was in our laundry room, and it kept
Hmm.
coming down from the rafters. And she was having these dreams night after night. And we did some sage, we did some stuff in the house because it felt real. Like it felt like, okay, there's something here, so there's something
Hmm.
going on. But at the same time, I also, that's not where my mind goes, not where so I thought, okay, there's got to be some reason for this. Well, what was really interesting is we sat together and we decided to channel to see if we could pull this energy forward because we could feel it present. And so it was coming into her dream state and communicating. And what we channeled was a young boy. He was
Hmm.
presenting himself. He was, we'll say, not a crossed. He was not crossed, or he was needing assistance to be crossed. He was coming to my daughter because he was close in age to my daughter, and he was trying to
Hmm.
get her attention. So when we brought him through, he showed himself as a young boy, not as this entity. So for me,
Wow.
uh, it's not that I haven't experienced other people. There's clients that I have that have had situations, other peers that have had situations. I myself, aside from that story, which really wasn't scary after all, and when we crossed the young boy over, and that was that. So luckily, no, I've not had anything like that to date.
That's probably for the better. I would assume. It doesn't seem like something like that could be very pleasant, but that's incredible that it was just. Why would do you think that when the spirit crosses over and it has the time to learn how to maybe communicate with those still in the physical, do you think that it chooses a fearful form to get attention, not necessarily to instill fear, but just to get the attention? Do you think that they do things like that?
Um, See, in my experience, they don't really choose a form to create fear, because anything from the spirit realm of a higher vibration won't create fear. When it's a spirit that is, we'll say, in between,
Hmm.
so they're maybe not crossed over completely. They're in between worlds, which there are lots of those, and they're not all bad. Like they're not all deep, dark, negative entities. Sometimes they will present themselves in that way. I've seen spirits present themselves as many different forms to get attention, like
Hmm.
animals to children, coming across as different types of people or different ages to be able to connect with that person, just like we were talking about before with Eric, in how he is the way he is because it's a way to connect with us. He's closer to the earth realm. So they do have their ways of doing things. Um, but anything that creates fear, if something's creating fear coming across really scary in some way, or it's instilling fear, then you're likely dealing with something that's not too high vibrational.
As I'm listening to you talk about this, it's sort of dawning on me that anything that might do that would have to carry the vibration of fear,
Yes.
at least to execute it. Maybe they have their own fears within themselves, but to impress that on another, I think they'd have to have that vibration. Thank you. That was a really good answer to that. It wasn't an easy question, I know. Before I ask you the next one, I just want to give a quick shout out to my good friend Rich over at Goof On. Thank you very much for everybody coming in here. But I see you in the chat, and you reminded me something that I forgot, and that is that it's Friday the 13th. Happy Friday the
That's
13th,
right.
guys.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
Yes.
you know what? We were going to do the show the 30th of October, which was one day before Halloween. That didn't seem to work out, but we got Friday the 13th, and you know what? I'm happy with that. I'll sleep all right tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder, bro. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you, bud. Okay, so we're moving on here on to the next question. And sorry, deal with me here. I'm working with these glasses. They're brand new, and I'm still getting used to them. Um, with respect to how you're able to communicate directly with spirit, how do you feel about ghost hunting? Is this mechanical approach necessary to contact the other side? Is it something that we need to go through this ritual of pulling out, instruments? And just to kind of give you an extra question on the end of that, why is there such a focus on evidence, tangible evidence? I mean, we're obviously both of the experience, right? We're the right brain and the left brain, and we walk around life, experiencing, perceiving through both. So why everybody wants evidence?
Well, okay. So this is a good one, and I'll tell you my guilty pleasure, okay, is Ghost Adventures. All right.
Me too.
That has been my guilty pleasure all through my cancer. I watched every episode of Ghost Adventures up and down and really examined what they were doing. And like, it's just, that's my guilty pleasure. But it's a really good question, because what exactly does that mean? Why do they do it? First of all, if we were to just, let's use them for an example, okay, and just
Yep.
kind of examine how they do it. Now, if you watch, they all have ability. Each one of them has ability. You can tell the way they, like Aaron is empathic. They have all kinds of abilities. So even though they are using all of these tools, you can see how over the years they have learned. Our consciousness in understanding what the paranormal is growing. So, there's different sections to it, so to speak. Just like any other topic there would be, or any other science, food, whatever is going on, there are different sections to it. And there are different ways that we enter the metaphysical, and the way we expand our consciousness into understanding the other side, into understanding this is us, this is part of us. How we enter into this subject matter is going to be different for everybody, whether it's through religion or science or ghost hunting. And so I don't think it's a wrong thing at all. Is it is it for me to want to go in and conjure up demons and do that kind of stuff? No, although I like watching and seeing what happens, but I necessarily don't want to be doing that part myself. But I find it fascinating to be able to, from my point of view, to know what I know and to watch the evidence. And I've played with that myself with EMF and recording. We have tons of videos. I have lots on my YouTube channel of orbs in our house and all kinds of things that go on. So it's also, the biggest part for us is we are beings that have been trained to have a physical experience. So, this is a tangible thing. So it makes people question. Yes, it makes good TV. It's exciting. it's like reality TV for the ghost lover, So there's an entertainment factor to it as well. But the biggest part is it not a door opener for the curious? Because you have to have some sense of curiosity to watch these shows. And even if you're questioning and you're watching and saying, I'm not really sure if this is real or not, it's going to start that ticker going. You're going to start thinking a little bit about it. So it's doing its job. Everything has its place.
That's really well said. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I could have come up with anything better than that. I mean, you're very right. I think in this respect that everything has its place. And I never really looked at it, I guess, directly as, the introduction of the curiosity to some people, although it definitely bolstered my curiosity and my interest because it was accessible. Ghost Adventures, in my opinion, is the best, has been the best. No, they're not without their controversy, but by and large, I think that they were actually on something real. I don't know what they're doing today, but in the first 8 seasons, we'll say, I really felt that they were doing something significant. That being said, I also feel like what they're doing is incredibly dangerous, especially when you allow yourself to become a vessel for something so old and ancient as, Zach has done. I think all 3 of them have done it at one point, but, that's just, It's really interesting. Do you think that at some point, and maybe looking further down the road in terms of ghost investigating, do you think people will eventually sort of abandon the use of equipment? I mean, I see the avenues now while we're using that, the way that you just explained, but do you think that eventually our bodies will be our most prized instrument to interpret what's happening on the other side?
Yes, I
Okay.
do. I do. I think that, it's gonna, because everybody is at these different states of consciousness, technology is gonna grow, but you're exactly right that as we go forward in future, we're going to understand that the tools are us.
Hmm.
We are the tools, and the presence of what we deemed as on the other side of the veil or the other side is really right here with us. And so more and more we're going to see that we're really at the early stages of discovery. We're really at these brand new baby step stages, and there is so much more for it to come out and become mainstream, and it's doing it. That is happening. But yeah, I do think that the tools they're going to change. They're going to become more sophisticated, and they're going to involve more of our own bodies.
Do you think, and this is something that kind of just came to me here, do you think at one point, and again, we're talking, very far off into the future, but, based on where we're going, is it a possibility that the two worlds, we'll call them two worlds, the physical world and the non-physical world, are blending closer together, that at one point we might actually be sort of intermeshed in terms of experience? And again, I might be talking thousands of years from now, but is this something that you could see as a possibility, or am I going off on my imagination a little bit?
No, I do agree with what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. To a degree, I do think that there's always going to be a sense of a physical experience. Although, as I'm saying that, Eric is just saying that, we can look far, far into the future and see that our bodies will eventually become light bodies.
Ah, yes. Okay. Yep.
So you're right. You're right. He says that it's hard for us to understand. It's hard for us to wrap our minds around this, but what we're going through right now is we're going through the connection of the greater mind, the higher mind, with the lower mind and the heart.
Huh.
And so that's like the initial stages to connecting into eventually the light body ascension.
God, I mean, I talk to a lot of people, but when you speak, it's just the illustration is right there in my head. And you might be kind of going off on this thing and coming back to this thing, but it's all just, I don't mean to blow you up too much, but man, just the way that you communicate some of these, I felt this way the last time we were together too. And, we were talking about some complex subjects as we
Yes.
are doing now. And you just have a way of explaining these things that, I know I understand, and people that have talked to me and, given me feedback on that show, they felt the same way. So thank you. That's
Oh,
just,
cool.
it's awesome.
Well, thank
I'm, I'm,
you.
I'm having such a great time with you. Uh,
Thank
to
you.
what to what degree do you think other people could learn to channel? Someone who doesn't consider themselves a sensitive, someone not necessarily familiar with contacting the spirit realms, could they become clear channels as well? And if I were to put this in an even more simple way of stating it, you take a class at a college, okay? You're not part of the college, but you're taking an extracurricular class. You walk in, you know nothing about basket weaving, but you want to do it. Is that the same sort of thing with channeling? Can you do that? Is it the same approach?
I love the basket weaving. That's good. That's good. Yes. So I like to use the analogy of everybody can have a piano, right? Everybody can own a piano. Everybody can take piano lessons and learn how to stroke those keys and sing a tune. But not everyone is going to do it with their eyes closed and play a symphony, right? So there's varying degrees, because not everybody, we are all able to channel. We are all able to connect with our ancestors. We are all able to connect with our higher self, with spirit. To the degree that we do is up to, well, some are more natural than others, as well as some are meant to do it in a sense that it's meant to help others, to teach others, Like what I do, I enjoy it. It's my passion. It's my purpose. It's how I live my life. And whereas somebody else may say, well, yeah, I can talk to my grandfather. You know,
Hmm.
I know when he's here, and they're satisfied with that. And that's great. That's fine. It's whatever, you know, just like not everybody's a mechanic. Not everybody's going to fix their car. Not everybody is going to, you know, we all have these different abilities, but yet we can all learn to change our oil. We can all learn to do these things. So it's within us. Yes, we can all do it, but not all to the same degree.
Man, that's that analogy is spot on. I'm not even going to say anything in addition to that because there's just nothing else to say. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about what it takes to become a channel. Okay, in respect to what kind of self-healing needs to really happen before somebody can channel clearly. So let's say you have the inkling, you're starting to notice, as you did, as a party favor, you're making these guesses that are accurate, and you're just starting to realize. So what kind of self-healing would somebody else? I mean, I understand your story was different, and you had a lot of things happen prior to, which might have blown the cap off of the veils for you. But for someone else, what might they need to do?
Well, two really big components are this. If you're wanting to channel, you want to first of all ask yourself what do you want to do with it? What's
Hmm.
the intent behind it? So, are you wanting to do it because you want to do it for someone else? Are you doing it because you want to look like Teresa Caputo and you want to be on a show, or you want to have a lot of fanfare? Like what is the real reason behind doing it, right? Because there's you have the ability to go as deep as you are willing to go. And the
Hmm.
deeper you're willing to go, um, the more you'll get out of it, the greater the experience, and the better you'll be able to channel. And not saying that anything is wrong or whatever anyone desires is, but you really need to understand your intent. And second of all, have awareness of yourself. Where are you at? What is it that you believe? What do you believe right now? Um, what do you believe about yourself? What kind of goals do you have? You have to be able to become present with yourself so that you can then start to assess how you feel. Um, oh, you know, all healers are mediums, all mediums are healers. Um, However, which way it comes for each person is
Hmm.
different, but you have to be willing to go within yourself, and you have to be willing to figure out what it is that you want for yourself. But if there's stuff within you, and I'm speaking in terms of healing, um, blocks, we'll say, and you'll hear a lot of this in spiritual community about blocks in the chakras, and blocks in your energy, and about ego and everything. And so really what this is how close can you get to your own authenticity?
Hmm.
So how authentic are you? Not how close are you like somebody else, but who are you? And how are you able to present the real you to yourself? Because
Hmm.
this is all about yourself. This isn't about other people. This is about you and your connection with spirit, and the willingness to be able to go to those depths and sometimes face really hard things about yourself.
Hmm.
Sometimes become aware of things that you believed in your life that you find that that's not true, or you find about other people around you that's not true. And that's all part of it. That's part of a healing journey. So you have to be willing to go on that journey. And it truly is only something you can do for yourself. Yes, you can take classes. Yes, you can talk to other people. You can watch people on YouTube. You can do everything on the outside, but you must be willing to continuously go back inside yourself and figure it out for yourself, because you're the only one that can do this.
So essentially, this is not going to be a weekend hobby
No.
experience for people. No, okay. So that, I mean, I understand what you're saying entirely, because when you do open that door, it's like never being able to come back. But then again, when you get on the other side and you start realizing what's there, why would you want to? Um,
Yeah, that's
I don't
right.
know. But That being said, out of the people that you speak with and those perhaps in readings and channelings that it comes up that they're, very intuitive, that they're healers, they're very gifted in a certain subject and so forth. What percentage do you think had fostered some of those abilities way earlier in different existences, for example, in Lemuria or Atlantis? How much of our knowledge is coming from past lives so far beyond we may not even have a recorded history in the sense today?
So you're asking how much influence does the people that I come across with, how much influence is happening from, say, other lifetimes and from history?
In a sense, and if you were, as far back as Atlantis, and obviously there was a different set of modalities that they were using then, in spirituality was something completely different. Existence was something different, and perhaps you garnered and spent time in the healing temples and learned how to heal. So my question is, how many people are pulling something? No, God, how do I want to ask this?
I see what you mean. I
Do
think
you
I know
understand what I'm trying to say?
I do. I
Okay,
do.
I'll clarify it after, just for everybody else. I'm sorry,
Okay.
guys.
Well, interesting that you would say this, because a majority of the peers that I am friends with and that I work with in this industry, as well as every client that comes to me, there is some connection there.
Mm.
So there is something that we have in common vibrationally, that spirit helps bring that person to me, that we've had past lives. And this may not be something I discuss with them or say to them during the sessions. It's something that I'm aware of. But I would say 90% of the people that I communicate with that are either as clients, students, or peers are here at this time, that have been in ancient times, that are bringing forward modalities. Some are very aware of the modalities that they're doing, and some are just discovering. I see them in many different stages, some in early discovery, some that are just realizing this stuff, which is amazing when you see somebody just go, oh my God, like that's always the best to watch happen. And truly, the types of things that people are able to bring through are mind blowing. Like there is no 2, 3, 4 modalities of anything. Like there's people that come through, and I had somebody come through with the emerald tablets, connected to the emerald tablets, and um, different galactic forms of healing and galactic guides that come through and speak to them and let them know about their agreements that they've had and certain things. And they'll come back to me, a month later and say, oh my God, I had this dream after this happened, and this being came to me and told me all this stuff. And like, it's just amazing what is really going on, and what our perception that we think is our reality is just a little smidgen of what is truly, truly us. Like it's incredible if we could really see it all. And Eric says we couldn't handle it. We couldn't handle it all.
I believe that. I believe that. I mean, we get overwhelmed when the guy in front of us in the car won't move and we start honking our horn. Light's been green for 0.3 seconds. No, I get that. You know what I mean? I think it's probably a self-preservation thing too. And this streamlined experience has walls, so to speak. And yes, things may infiltrate, but you don't want to break that casing yet. You know what I mean? You might change the experience you're having here. What's the difference between clairvoyance, intuition, and channeling? And how does psychic activity in ESP fit into this model?
Okay, so clairvoyance, what were the other two?
And sorry, clairvoyance.
Intuition and channeling. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, clairvoyance is when you are it's clear seeing. So and not to be mistaken that clairvoyance is not one thing, because there are mediums or intuitives that see spirit as a human being, just like we see each other. There are mediums that see spirit, head to toe, just the way Uncle George looked when Uncle George passed. There he is, right there in full color, standing right beside you. Okay, so that's one form of clairvoyance. But there's also like the way that I generally see it, which is in images, flashes. I will see it often in the morning when I'm waking up. Spirit will give me symbols, pictures, faces, words. Just like I call it my inner screen. It's like a little
Mm-hmm.
TV screen that
Mm-hmm.
pops up. That's a form of clairvoyance. Um, Aura seeing is another form of clairvoyance. Now, intuition is, let's consider that your gut feeling. That's that everybody has their intuition. Every single human being has
Mm-hmm.
an intuition, and that's something that you can develop. And so, for an example, we all know what it's like when we go against something that we feel we should have done. Okay, so I could have gone left, but I chose to go right. But I knew I should have gone left because when I went right, there was a roadblock and I sat in traffic for like 5 hours. And if I had gone left, I would have been there in 10 minutes. Just as an example, that
Mm-hmm.
gut feeling that we get, and we get it all the time. And I'll tell you something really quick. If you want to practice with your intuition, is ask yourself, ask your stomach, ask your gut a question. And so when you're making a decision, it could be simply being in the grocery store saying, is the cereal in my left hand better for me, or is the cereal in my right hand? So you hold up the cereal box in your left hand, you say, okay, is this good for me? And you wait for a feeling. Now, when it's going to be a yes, it's going to be an expanded feeling. When it's a no, it's going to be a contracted feeling. And so you want to practice with these type of yes and no questions with your body. So you start to feel the expansion and the contraction. And it's going to be different for different people. Some people are going to feel it real strong, and some
Mm-hmm.
people are going to feel it really subtle. But that's something that you can do right today and that you can play with to start to work with that part of your body. So intuition is the knowing, is the feeling, the knowing that I feel like this is the right thing to do. This is my gut feeling. And your gut feeling is yours. And even if somebody else says, no, that's not right, but your gut is saying, yes, it is, yes, it is, yes, it is. Always go with your gut, because that intuitive knowing will never be wrong for you, right? And so channeling is like, we'll call this communicating with the higher mind, or with spiritual beings. And so it's being connected to information,
Mm-hmm.
and the information can come in different ways, just like I said before, telepathic, or emotionally into the body. And there's different forms of channeling. There's trance channeling, where the channeler is not conscious, where they step into a different area of their consciousness, and the being that they're channeling will then merge with their body and speaks through them using their voice box. That's one type.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I predominantly do is conscious channeling, which is I may still close my eyes and I go into a little bit of a zone, but I am bringing through information, and it's information from a greater place than myself, from my human mind. So it's like being connected to the universal mind, the God mind, and we all have that connection. So channeling can come in so many different forms. Like you're sitting down in doodling on paper, you're doing artwork, you're doing music. It comes forth as creativity. It's being connected to that spacey part of your mind that you can kind of zone out and get into your groove and whatever you're doing. That's that channeling space there. ESP,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
ESP. So that's more of a foreshadowing. So even
Premonition.
though premonition, even though I title myself a psychic medium, I use the word psychic for general understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like using the terms for myself, but I say that so that people have an idea. But the truth is in my belief and experience, ESP, or psychic information, is reading into a field, because there's continuous data that's occurring around us at all times. And so our energy field around us it has memory to it. So we can tap into that field and create and gather psychic information about that person or about what they're connected to. Sometimes see information about them that's coming ahead if it's a potential that's close to them. But with ESP, it's getting information that Eric always says it's the highest potential in the moment that you're in, because that can change, right? So we look at things that have happened in the world recently, such as the election. And so would there be ESP to that? Well, yes, but that also did a lot of flip-flopping and changing over the last year, dependent on free will and different things that were happening in the universe. So that's why you can get so many different psychics or people that do this type of work that can have different aspects and information, because they may be tapping into something slightly different. They may be tapping in at a different timeline. So
Yep.
it never makes them wrong. You never want to look at them and say you're wrong or you're off. They're tapping in or tuning into a different frequency, basically. So ESP is some people, that is their main way. They get it through dreams. They get it through flashes, images, and again, just through knowing.
That's a really good point, and something that sort of bothered me slightly as it keeps coming up, and that is, the people saying, well, if people were psychic and they were clairvoyants, why couldn't they predict what happened with the virus? Why couldn't they predict what happened with 9/11? Why could you know what? You got to really look at how many people these events affect. Okay, and if everything's sort of happening for a reason, if there's some organization somewhere that these things happen so that we can experience them, sometimes the premonition of something like that coming, it has to come regardless. So, in my opinion, you're not always going to see that. But that being said, you brought up a great point, and I attribute this a lot to people who talk about worldly destruction, forces of nature that take us out. I think that they are seeing a different timeline. I think something does change from the moment that they're seeing it until the date that they report it should be happening. And I think it's honestly that simple. A lot of people will say that's a cop out of an answer, but it still falls in line when you talk about frequencies, dimensions, string theory, timelines, and so forth. So, I mean, that's really well said. And the little exercise you gave for determining intuition, I want you guys to try that. If this is, resonating with you out there in the chat, when you do, shoot a comment down in the comment section below if you're watching the show afterward. I'd love to hear what you guys come out of this with, because I'll tell you this much. I know that there are some sort of senses in your hands. There's some sort of receptor. I don't know what it is, where you can feel things out with your hands. Now, I'll very briefly explain why I think this is the case. There have been many instances where I've lost something, and it was just sort of a game for me at that moment to stick up my hand, kind of scan the room. And I'll be honest with you, I'd say about 85% of the time, when I start feeling where it is, it locks in and boom, it goes right there. I had one instance where I was looking for my passport and it actually moved on me in a closet underneath books where it should never have been. The guy outside was waiting for me. We were going up to Canada and he was already mad that he was waiting for me. I tore my entire room apart and I finally said, fine, let me try this one last thing. And sure enough, I could feel that.
Yeah.
So in this exercise, it's also a good thing to be aware of what your body's telling you when it comes to these more subtle energies. By no means am I a master at that. I ignore it all the time. But that being said, it's enough to start becoming more clear. And, in certain circumstances where emotions are rampant, it's better to be able to hear that inner voice and maybe even have it reflected in your physical form, in some way, shape, or form. So that's really cool. I'm going to try that too, because I think that'll be a great exercise. So in your experiences here, what is one thing you've learned that comes directly from spirit or the spirit world, perhaps through your channelings?
Well, I think the first thing that just came to mind is that truth is different for every person,
Mm-hmm.
that there is no one truth. And just the same as we were talking about timelines and talking about how, are we tuning into different timelines and understanding energy. If you understand energy, then you will understand what we're talking about here. But that spirit has taught me that truth really is different for every person, that we are God, that God is not something or somebody that sits on a throne up in the sky, that God is an overall energy, is God is a collective energy, and we are all pieces of that energy. And so when we think about the overall universe, we are parts of that universe. And so just like God, the overall or source or whatever you want to call it, creates, we too have the ability to create our own universe. And the truth that we create for ourselves is subjective to us and our perspective and our experience. And so every person can live their own truth and what's right for them and not be judged by another person's truth.
Do you think that the reason monotheism and even polytheism in respect to religions exists in the sense that there's a perception that there's this physical being, do you think possibly that is a reflection of perhaps some of the extraterrestrial entities that would either work with us in the past or had interaction with us? Because it just seems very strange to me that you have an entire planet of people who think that God is a figure. And I kind of look back, and this is sort of my thought. I mean, I haven't really come across too much in this, and that again, I haven't really researched too hard into this specifically, but it would just seem to make sense. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I agree. I mean, that could be a whole show on itself,
Yeah.
because that's a deep one there. And I mean, we could go back to I don't know if you ever watch Ancient Aliens, but there's or not Gaia. On Gaia, they have some really good explanations of the sky gods,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
of some of the beings that were considered gods, and that takes us right back to ancient Egypt and in that time. So yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with that. And I agree. I believe that a lot of what was written and handed over time were many different versions of that. Um, it's a pretty deep subject to really touch just a
I
few
know.
minutes
Sorry.
on.
I know.
But you're right. I do agree with that. Um, I guess the biggest thing to me is I think about the universal energy, about the overall universal energy, and how that is a being in itself. It's alive. The collective energy is alive. And it's not one specific being, but yet when we speak of the universe, that universe has other beings that is part of this collective energy as well. So Earth is just merely one portion of this collective being.
I think in respect to the time that we'll move forward with or without us, at some point in history, providing we survive our own tenure here on the whole pocket of darkness where we didn't have the connection to the universal energies the way we may have in the past. We weren't aware of other species outside of our terrestrial body. I mean, to me, it's just silly. And a lot of other people feel the same way that,
Mm-hmm.
Why we don't know it. I mean, I have my theories, but we could talk about that for a whole nother show too.
Yes.
But speaking of other beings, this is a question I have always had and never really got around to asking anybody with the know-how. It's something I've felt in me, but I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Through your channeling, do you have access to information about cryptids, such as the elusive yet pervasive Bigfoot, or maybe even the Loch Ness Monster, or some of these other interesting creatures that sort of pop into our dimension?
Yes. Um, Eric has actually brought through many of these beings. And
Really?
yes, there's actually on channeling Eric, there are some channeling sessions with Bigfoot and
Huh.
Sasquatch. And the Loch Ness Monster, I don't think so. Now, I will tell you that there are some sessions where there have been some interesting beings that have come forward for specific people. And it's often people that are already very open and tend to have some knowledge in that area, is where I see that most of them come through. I've not yet had a Sasquatch come through myself for me, like
Mhm.
during any private sessions. But I mean, Eric has brought forward some very interesting beings for many of my peers that I work with on channeling Eric, and some for myself as well. So if you go through those archives, you'll see some pretty interesting sessions there, but they're all interdimensional. I mean, we're not just talking on the same dimension here in universe. Like, we've got many dimensions of beings that pop in and out and all over the place.
That's you know what? That's incredible. I'll be honest with you. That's incredible. I've always felt that, as we get closer to the source, you can ask any question and get an answer. Now, obviously, to extend that answer to somebody else who has a question in this way, they want the proof. But
Yeah.
sometimes for you, all it takes is that voice that comes through. I mean, I was simply asking if you just might have had some information, but you're talking about channeling the creature work. But how is that different than maybe channeling a spirit or perhaps an earthbound individual who's still here? Because I know you
That's a good question.
guys have.
That's a good question because I mean, that's something that I would ask in watching that with other people. That's a really good question because my answer to that is that
Mhm.
if I'm seeing visuals of it, I know how my instrument works, and that's just from using it over and over and over again. So I do trust what I feel. I trust what
Mhm.
I'm pulling in. Spirits do feel different to me, and I know I've heard this before with other channels that we're able to sense the difference, and that's just from practice. And I can see how that would be really hard for somebody that is not in this world doing this type of work, how that could be really like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, sure you do, or what exactly are you really talking to? I get it, I do, but but this is something that you do have to experience it for yourself and go down that road for yourself, because there's never going to be enough proof for anybody. That is really
Yeah.
the truth. Until you go down this road yourself and have your own experiences. I could sit here and tell somebody that was skeptic till the cows come home, all kinds of stuff, and they may even see something happen, and they still would go home and may question what had happened, because if they're not ready for it, they're not ready for it. And that's just the way it is. But not all of this is for everybody. You know, I can't say that I don't have a lot of experience with like a Bigfoot or something like that
Mhm.
to really
Mhm.
put a whole whack of information into it. But what I can say is that in the times that Eric, and I mean, I trust Eric, I work with him a lot. So when he brings somebody through, and I can feel the difference, and the way he explains it is some of these beings he will help link the energy. So it's like creating a bridge for us to be able to bring the energy through. And so it's just, it's trust. It's a lot of trust, and it's a lot of trust. And it's doing this day in and day out, every day, every day, every day. And it's just like, it's like anything else. When you do it all the time, you know it like the back of your hand, and you just know what things feel like for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. The more that you actually do this type of work, the more sensitive you become and the more familiar you become with it as well. It's just the same for everything. You know what I mean? Like riding a bike, you have to start somewhere. And once you do that, you get your feel on that. And I mean, look what people do on bikes and skateboards these days. So,
Yeah.
no, that makes perfect sense. Great point. Very okay. Here's somebody who has lots of knowledge and wisdom, but if she doesn't know something, she's going to tell you. All right. Nope. We don't have people here who you have to worry about making something up just to cover the base. I mean, we have some real genuine guests here. Yes, I'm still blowing you up. Sorry. I'll do it until the day I die. It's fine. What is the most challenging aspect about what is the most challenging aspect about channeling spirit for you?
Oh gosh, I'll have to say that that would be pushing the boundaries and trust, going down those roads of trust. Um, you know, I don't think there's ever a day that I don't sit and before a group reading or something and say, gee, I hope they all show up. I hope they're all gonna show up and visit. And they always do. They always do. They always do come
Mm-hmm.
through. But
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a weird place to be when, you're it's hard to explain because you do this work every day, and yet every now and again you'll get these, I guess you call it stage fright, and you've got a family of 10 people sitting in front of you, and they've got a loved one that they really want to connect with, and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, what if they don't show up? What if they're not here? And there's that sense of trust, and this is the process as well, is that if they didn't show up, there would be a reason for that. You have to trust in that too. You have to trust in not being in control, in the sense that it's not up to you. You show up,
Mm-hmm.
you do the work, and you trust, and spirit brings the rest to you. So there's a lot of faith in this work, and there is a lot of trust. But I will tell you, I've only once had somebody not show up. Only once in all the times that I've channeled. Spirit has always brought through. And maybe they don't always bring through in order, or they may bring through different people, and then the person really wanted to speak to so and so, and that person was hanging out in the wings for last, to come in. So it's up to spirit how they do it. It's not up to me. I don't control how they come through, but I wouldn't be a human being. And I'm still a human being. I'm still human having this experience. And so, of course, like anything else, I'm going to get nervous sometimes, and I'm going to
Sure.
question myself sometimes. So really it's that path of trust and really overcoming that doubt. And if you're going to do this work, if you're really serious about doing this, that learning that trust in yourself and trust in spirit is the key. It's so important. So important.
And there is your answer, Offworld Adam, who asked, "How do you know who to trust?" There's your answer, my friend. You got to trust yourself too, man. It's if you're not comfortable with yourself and you don't know who you are, this is a very difficult thing to do, if not impossible. I'll be honest with you. And you want to talk about clarity? The more you know yourself, the better you know yourself, the more you can help yourself and other people using this avenue. What part does dreaming play in channeling, and is there a relationship at all?
Between dreaming and channeling?
Mm-hmm.
I would say yes. Now, for myself, uh, an interesting pattern that I have always had dreams with the spirit world, and when I was very young, I would dream about people that um, they would tell me that they were part of my family. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
who they were, but I would recognize them in pictures. And when my grandmother passed away, she came to me in dreams, and she came to me and showed me things that I would go to my mother and tell her, and I would have no way of knowing some of these things because she had a fire and things were burnt down, and we didn't have evidence of all these types of things that she was showing me. So that was a staple. And what I've noticed is throughout my career of channeling is often with Eric, and this is what's been so interesting, is many of the spirits that I brought forward. So one was Kobe Bryant, was one I'll use as an example. Kobe came to me in a dream, and he came two different nights in a dream and showed me the inside of his helicopter, and showed me some of the thoughts that he had in his mind, just different bits and pieces. And I didn't know I was channeling him at that time. So this was shortly
Hmm.
after he had passed. So this is before Elisa had asked me. And I I started to develop this pattern where I would figure out that they would come to me in a dream. Not all of them, but a lot of them would come to me in a dream about a week before. Elisa would say, "Hey, did you want to channel so and so?" You know, so it would I once I had a dream, I'd be like, "Okay, anytime now." And it was a little game that I would play because 'cause I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm not saying anything," because I wanted to wait and see how it all would unfold, and I'd say to Eric, "Okay, bring it if it's gonna happen." Sure enough, it would happen. I'd always say to Lisa, "I knew you were gonna say that." But
Oh,
yeah,
that's so
definitely it was
funny.
there. Mhm.
That's so funny. And I actually did. You did channel Kobe Bryant with
Uh,
Elisa,
yeah, I did.
correct?
Yep, yeah, yeah.
Got a little freeze there. She'll be back. You did, right? I did that. Make sure all my matchsticks are in a row. God, that was a terrible analogy, or simile, or whatever the hell it is. Anyway, so that was one of the more clear channelings that I have heard dealing with celebrities, and it was a very emotional channeling. I won't
Mhm.
get too much into it. You guys go over to Channeling Eric and check out that channeling that Elisa, Eric, and Michelle did with Kobe Bryant. It's truly remarkable. I'll be honest with you. It's
Oh, no, we froze.
Alrighty, and we're back. So sorry about that, folks.
That's okay.
Internet's a little, and I'm glad you're still here. Thank you. It the show, you know what I mean? Um, and thank you guys for sticking in there. I see a couple of you left. That's fine. You'll be back. I know you will. All right. So I was asking you, and I don't think you heard any of that question. You mentioned many times that to channel intuitively, they have connection to spirit. They all have the potential to be sensitive and so forth. Uh, is it possible that we're walking around our everyday life and actually having thoughts we think are our own, but in fact we're actually channeling, or some of the internal dialogue that we have with ourselves is actually possibly spirit again that we might be channeling?
Yes, yes, and a very big yes. A lot. Yes. So that's so interesting to bring that up because what you want to always look at is you are not your thoughts. So your thoughts, if you're open and not paying attention, depending on where you're vibrating, are those thoughts that are coming in from another spirit?
Hmm.
Good thoughts, bad thoughts, however you want to look at it. But
Yes.
yes, but that's something to really pay attention to because um, you're being given information from spirit at all times. If you're willing to be open to that communication, you will notice that you are getting nudges, thoughts, sometimes flashes of information and being directed. And the more you're willing to be open to that, the more you're going to notice. That's like law of attraction. The more you notice, the more you will get. So yes, very true.
That's something I've actually been talking to my friend Rich about, this law of attraction, where the more you get into it, the more you start opening up. In fact, Alien Addict had brought that up as well in one of our shows that I know you guys have seen. But that's a very curious topic to go into, because people ask, how do I get into this? Or how come, you can feel something? Logical explanation is just a matter of the finesse in which you deliver that to somebody, because again, these are very personal topics and very personal situations that you put yourself into. And again, at some point, and go back to square one, and not necessarily reinvent yourself to any degree, but to learn more about who you are as the whole. And for some people, that can be really scary. And believe me, I understand it. We have so many layers to us and the trauma that we've endured. It's about the healing. But right now, in my opinion, is one of the best times but I'm because the healing is presented to us. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up, because this has been absolutely fantastic. And, obviously I'd love to do it again if you're open, but we can discuss that if you'd like. Mm-hmm. Excellent. I would love to do that. And I can see everybody in the chat room has been having a fantastic time, really enjoying the show tonight. So, all right. So when you're reading for somebody or you're channeling and you all of a sudden get some of their past life into your vision and you realize that this is something that you need to convey to that person, how do you go about that? And it's not necessarily somebody in the respect that they know that they've lived before, you know what I mean? It's just something that comes up randomly. How do you give somebody that information and break them into that?
Well, the biggest thing is that, see, I have a lot of trust in spirit and a lot of trust in my guides. And so when my guides are presenting something to me, it's always in order of how it's going to make sense for that person. So, for example, if it's coming up and they're showing it to me, then it's something that's meant to come out, and often does come out because they're either just about to ask something about that, or there's something connected to that, or they had a curiosity that maybe they're not conveying yet, and that opens that door. So really and honestly, my style of channeling is that I flow with whatever spirit gives me, and I let people know that before I start. As I say, listen, sometimes people have questions or they have something specific they want to do, but a lot of times I just say, I'm going to bring it out to you in whatever way spirit gives it to me. And I just allow it to flow. I've never really had a circumstance where something's come out and it's not been that right moment for somebody. Like, it usually, spirit knows. Spirit knows more than what I know. So my human mind's right out of it. So it's the greater mind. So it's always right in flow.
In the greater mind, because I used to have readings with somebody many years ago. I actually did my first reading when I was 12. This wonderful woman, her name was Joyce. And, as a kid, that side of myself, I would visit her once in a while, every few years, maybe, to have a reading. And I remember coming to her at one point, maybe when I was 17 or 18. I'm like, yeah, do you remember when you mentioned this about me, about this? She goes, I don't remember anything from my readings. She goes, I just shut off and I let it take through. And she wasn't somebody who allowed spirit to take over her body in mannerisms and voice and so forth, but she would pull herself out. She would remove herself so that this would just, it was so, and I realized then that there was a separation in a sense, or there was a distinct a division between the person who is the channel and the spirit coming through. So that's really curious. So my last question for you here this evening is, are there any limits to who and what you are able to channel?
Well, I will tell you, the only limits there are the limits you put on yourself. And that's from Mr. Eric Medhus.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I just had a
That's
session,
fantastic.
a session last night that the entire session was channeling somebody's family of animals, looking through medical
Oh, yeah.
issues for their animals, and like it can go anywhere, and it's there's a lot of trust in who comes to me and what they are looking for. There's a big connection with spirit and trust that that connection is meant to come together, and spirit has brought me
Mhm.
all kinds of different experiences. So who am I to put the limit on it? I just go for it.
You know, again, it comes back to, you know, the right brain aspect, the right brain perception, and again, trusting. Again, this becomes a lot more clearer for people to understand as they start to explore their own abilities and, again, become clear channels for themselves. This stuff will make more sense if you guys aren't really clicking with it. If you do the work, you will find more. And, you know, not before then, usually.
Yeah.
But listen, Michelle, I want to thank you very much for coming on tonight. This has been a show I'm with such anticipation, and I know you have been too. And this was fantastic. I hope you had a great time tonight.
I did. Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome.
It was at my absolute pleasure, and we will talk about having you on again, because I know that we're only touching a little bit of this, and I have some questions. In talking with you tonight, I realize, you know, different areas that we could branch off out into and be able to pull plenty of insight from that would, again, be a little bit more involved and take some more time to get into. So maybe on the next show, we'll be able to do that. But for the time being, guys, I want healingh-art.com and check out Michelle Gray and everything she's done there. If you're interested, book a session with her. She is incredible. I haven't even had a session with her yet. I can tell you she's incredible because I've talked to her twice at this capacity, and I am blown away, you know, each time. So, again, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Everybody's off camera. I'm not going to make it a very long outro tonight just because the lag is really sort of an issue, and I don't think we're going to have much, you know, success with the outro. So, all right. Thank you very much, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I will talk to you in just a moment.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you once again, everyone, for visiting tonight. I see a lot of great guys and girls in the chat. Long Island Bigfoot. You got Great Lakes Sasquatch. You got Patrick Vaughn. He did a great show with me a few shows ago on Bigfoot. Guys, check that out. Coral Ann, Katrina Arnold. Thanks for coming in. I see some new faces here. Team McGee. Okay. Off-World Adam, I think I mentioned you earlier. You guys are awesome. Thank you for coming in tonight. This is just what I'm seeing in front of me here. I'm going to end the show up to mess around with this evening. Tomorrow, I have from Black Lotus Productions and the Paranormal News Network, Damian Gray and Ralph Torlucci, and they'll be joining me, and we'll be talking further about the paranormal, their investigations, and why they're such magnets for the paranormal. So this will be a great show tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. If I didn't mess up things because of the time change, I don't know. You guys know better than I, wherever you're living. All right, folks. Thank you once again. Oh, I'm sorry. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. I saw a lot of you guys had liked the show tonight, and I really appreciate your participation and your support. That being said, it has been brought to my attention not too long ago that people have been wanting to donate to my channel, so I have made a way to do that. There's a PayPal link in the description below if you're interested in contributing to the channel. Every penny goes right back into what I'm doing, the same way that Goofon does. As you see the beautiful improvements he's made to his channel, I'm also doing the same with mine. This is the green screen. First night, I think I'll use it again. All right, guys, thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your night, and we will see you tomorrow. I don't think I forgot anything. Nope. Happy Friday the 13th. We'll see you guys then.